I got out of a relationship about 8 months ago, and it was a long relationship, and I wrote a lot of kind of sad and bitter and angry poems about that. So I'm going to read you one of those, probably more of those later. This doesn't have a title. A season has come and gone without you. I have taken my grandfather to buy tomato plants since I left you. He has planted the tomato plants and fertilized them and watered them since then. I did not have to remind him to turn off the hose. Some things you don't forget, even though they are less important than the things you do forget. My grandmother has asked about you every 20 minutes for the 16 hours that I am with her each week, for the 4 months that you have not been a part of my life. I have gotten better at reminding her that we are not together, but it still stings every time she asks if I think you might have been afraid of commitment. The tomatoes have grown since I left you. My grandparents have gone out to pick them each day. They did not ask me to help until late in the summer, when I did and felt bad to see rotted tomatoes on the ground, that they had missed because their eyesight is poor now. I felt responsible for the rotting of the tomatoes and the enjoyment my grandmother would have gotten out of eating them, but didn't. I missed you. I went to the garden every day that I could after that. I missed you. I rescued sweet 100s that had fallen from the vine and lay in the dirt where they would have rotted. The big boys and the Rutgers tomatoes stopped coming as it got colder. I found less and less sweet 100s on the ground. I picked my grandmother the few zinnias that had bloomed and replaced the old ones in the vase on the kitchen table, which she could not tell were dead. You called me sometimes while I was setting their table for dinner or while we were watching the news. I would tell my grandmother that you had called, and she would ask if I thought maybe we would get back together. I don't remember when I stopped saying I don't know and started telling her we would not. And she would ask if I thought maybe you had a fear of commitment, and it would still sting. And she will ask again next week, and it will still sting. And there is no need to check for sweet 100s anymore, as it has gotten colder. And I have realized that a season has come and gone since I left you, and another season has begun without you, and it will end without you, and another will begin, and so on. And if we plant tomatoes next year, I will go and look for ripe ones as often as I can, because I don't want to find them red on the ground, rotted and wasted, and know that I am responsible. And I miss you, but I am coming to terms with the idea that you will still not be there next summer or the summer after that, even if I have learned not to let things rot. That's that. Thank you. I'm going to read the prose piece now. It's called Mexican Sugar Candy. The first time I saw anybody do coke was at a frat house at Columbia University. I don't know why there are frats at Columbia University, but one of my friends was living there that summer. When somebody pulled out the coke, I was so clueless I actually asked what it was. Mexican sugar candy, one of the guys told me, laughing. I was too dumb to realize he was making fun of me. Nobody asked me if I wanted any because they knew I didn't. A lot of hipsters did coke at Columbia, but I wasn't cool enough, or was maybe too cool to hang out with them. It seems wrong to even call them hipsters since a lot of them went to prep schools, and they had parents paying for them to live on the Upper West Side and study things like classics and film studies. But they rode fixed-gear bikes and prided themselves on listening to obscure music, so what else would you call them, really? The first boy I kissed there was taking pictures with his DSLR at a Yola Tango concert on campus when I first saw him. He wrote me a letter a few weeks later explaining why he couldn't be my boyfriend but hoped we could still be friends. It wasn't even handwritten. He had typed it in Microsoft Word and probably printed it out at the school library. I ripped it in half in front of him and said, "Fuck you," then kept the pieces and moped for a solid month about it in my dorm room. Later he got into heroin, I heard. When he met me, he didn't drink because he was a good Muslim. Then he only smoked weed. Then he got into coke, and then heroin, I guess. Now he goes to Harvard Law. So basically, even kids who did heroin in college are more successful than me. I was at that frat house because I was in love with one of the boys I watched do coke. I fell in love a lot during that period in my life, mostly with boys who didn't pay much attention to me. I don't fall in love much anymore because A, I'm not 19, and B, I've given up on people. In retrospect, it was kind of decent of that guy to dump me with a letter, even if it wasn't handwritten. If a guy handed me a letter today explaining why he didn't want to be my boyfriend, I'd probably still tear it up and say, "Fuck you," but I would actually be thinking, wow, that was a lot of effort, what a nice guy. And then I would think, that's kind of fucked up that my expectations have become so low that I'm grateful someone used up a fraction of their printer ink to dump me. Because now I know things like how much printer ink costs and how inconsiderate most people are. That was true. Okay. This one is kind of silly. Kiss me after having thrown up. I want you with vomit on your breath. Pass out on top of me. Break a window with your hand. I don't care. It is sexy and will keep me from falling in love with you. This is a love poem, I guess. Your eyes are not windows, still I want to catch them. Crawl into my night smile, I am stroking your hair there, and whispering into your pretty idyllic. Hold a candle to my face, when the moon is on your shoulders and I am deep in the caves of you, I will tell you that you are beautiful. Kiss me with your cracked lips, I want to be alone in the universe with you. And this is another bitter breakup poem. I still wake up angry at you sometimes, but you are not next to me to tell and give you a little punch on the shoulder. It makes me feel passive-aggressive, and it makes me want to write angry tweets and poems to put on the internet to tell you, and give you a little virtual punch on the shoulder. But I would never do that. I'm too nice of a person, or was before I met you. Okay. This was published in Have You Seen My Whale? I don't know if you guys read that. It's a very important internet publication. I put a record on and think about how Judy Garland's mother and agents called her an ugly duckling, and how sad famous people are, and how no one feels bad for them. Oh, they're famous. What do they have to complain about? Maybe if someone had some sympathy, she wouldn't have died at 47. Probably she still would have, but you never know. Oh, my thing turned off. Okay. Another poem. The wind is not alone in not howling, but something cries out in the night, or wants to. Something wants to cry out and doesn't know how. It wants to be heard and at the same time to be so silent that it will disappear. You wait until the house is empty to scream. You are always waiting for the house to be empty to scream, or not to see if you will scream. We are always waiting for an empty house to tell us who we are. I was the brightness in your hair. Now I am the cold snap of a branch in the morning after a thunderstorm. I will fall on someone's car and kill them. My love will fall on someone new and kill them. I am tired of being real. Whisper into my hair, I am drowning for you, Merry Christmas. Spend the next 100 years with me at the bottom of the ocean. I am hungry for your smile. Sink into the deep blackness with me. I want you there with me when I am cold and weightless. Watch things decay with me. Make trash out of art. Let's be reincarnated as birds together. I have so many poems, but they're so short, so I picked a lot of them. I like the way you move as if every bone in your body was slowly breaking. I like the way you breathe, taking in just as much as you need to live. I like the way you could love me if you never got to know me any better. I have no idea how long it's been. Has it been 15 to 20 minutes? No? Probably not. This is called Blueberry Pancakes. He says cassette tapes are making a comeback. They're like collector's items and cheaper than vinyl. I wonder if even hipsters would really go for that. I got foundation all over his pillow, but it's not as glamorous as it sounds. I still have aches in my legs, and not the good kind. I'm not made for this bohemian lifestyle. Besides, I like pop music too much, so I'll skip the blueberry pancakes and go home and shower. I really like how people ask each other what the other one is thinking when lying in bed after sex. I don't like being asked what I am thinking, but I think it is cute and nice that people do that. Try not to emotionally damage each other, at least while naked. Let's see. Has anybody read The Velveteen Rabbit?
Yes.
Okay. This one is based on that, and it's not really going to make that much sense if you haven't read it, but I'll read it anyway. I am not real anymore. My fur, once worn off by love, has regrown in the night. I will wait in the nursery for someone to make me real again. Will you be my skin horse? Will you love me forever? Will you love me until my eyes pop off? I thought you'd be there when I died. I just have a couple more, I think. I will build a world in your eyes. You will not be able to see, but it will be beautiful. I don't want you to see me as I am. I want you to see me as I will rebuild myself. I will rebuild myself in our eyes. We will not be able to see anything but color and light. I am not going to shield you from the world that will not cease from existing, no matter how hard we try to destroy it. I will not destroy you. I cannot destroy you if I try. What's more important, I will not destroy me for you. I will not destroy me anymore. Alright, one more breakup poem. It's called The Habit of Loving You. Toward the end, it was all habit. The bus ride to arrive at your apartment, the wait for you to return from work. There are things you can learn so well you no longer think about doing them. Loving you became this big a part of me. The commute was a thing my body did. A train carried me downtown, pulling a suitcase, socks, blue jeans, heart. My body softened into yours when you put down your bag to hug me, still in your suit. My life softened into yours too. By the end, we loved each other because we had loved each other for so long. If it weren't true, it wouldn't be so hard to admit. Maybe we listen to the same songs over and over for the same reason we fall in love with the same people again and again. We used up all our courage long ago. We haven't the strength left to change. And I think that's it. Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy Saulzerby. That was really, really good. I think cassette tapes are a cool format. We're going to take a break that is shorter than Ann Sexton's Happy Moments, and I'm going to come around and collect a few dollars from each of you that goes to the poets. I apologize for saying that. So I'll be back in 5 minutes.
Fair hair, sweet locks of glee, I held her close on Jubilee. And as the queen did crown us, we could not believe such jubilee. For in the crowds were ladies three, purred maidens nude for Jubilee. Oh, so we wept, never to be. I tapped 3 puss on Jubilee. Woo! Poetry! That was a poem. Alright. I thought that was heckling, but it was just talking. So the first thing I'm going to read is Nathaniel, who's... I'm not good with microphones. Okay. Nathaniel, who is sitting in the corner of the room in the VIP booth. Can I take this? Ooh, no, I feel like a rapper. Is that not good? Can you guys... You still hear me? Okay. Nathaniel is sitting in the corner of the room, and today is his birthday. Woo! Mild applause. Moderate applause. And so I wrote Nathaniel a birthday poem while I was walking to the train station from New Brunswick, and also while I was walking here. This poem is called A Poem on the Occasion of Nathaniel Otting's Birthday. A boy skateboards past on his way to class. Happy birthday, Nathaniel. Birthday hawks descend. You are a real great friend. Happy birthday, Nathaniel. Nathaniel, according to Facebook, you share a birthday with my friend Cody, but I like you a lot more than him. He's kind of an asshole. Happy birthday, Nathaniel. Nathaniel, I've been meaning to call you, but I've been tending a fire. As it is often said, more soon. I look forward to trying to buy you dinner tonight. Most appropriate to say would be you are the Bernadette Mare to my Hannah Wiener. Though I do only say this because I should really have given you a call yesterday, and I reminded myself several times, but did not. Happy birthday, Nathaniel. This morning, returning from the library, I looked down toward the grass only to spot a hair clip that had, unbeknown to me, fallen out of my pocket last night. Wow, a truly fortunate day. Happy birthday, Nathaniel. The weather is brilliant, nods into full form by 3 p.m., the time when I have chosen to depart for this lovely city, and all the while I am thinking of you, Nathaniel, on your first day of being 32, or perhaps 33 or 34, or even 31, I'm not quite sure. Happy birthday, Nathaniel. Alright, I wrote another poem on my phone, which is stupid to do. Don't do that, because it's annoying. This is, prior to coming here today, I went to a hypnotism party, which was incredible, and I wrote a poem about it. So I'm going to read that poem for you now. It is called Hypnotism. Abigail, my neighbor, says come over for a hypnotism party. Her dad, fat and named Andrew, has learned the art of hypnosis and knows that it is most effective on young college kids like me, a friend of his daughter. He wants to buy us pizza and put us to sleep, and I am poor and tired, so I tell Abigail I will briefly attend before I leave for Manhattan, where I am reading at 5:30. Not too long after I put down the phone, I find myself thinking about Andrew, Abigail's aging father, the hypnotist. And though I had met him once before when he was with his wife, Abigail's mother, I felt not much of anything toward him. The fact I have just learned that Andrew, Abigail's father, can hypnotize now strikes me as incredibly attractive. And the thoughts I am thinking about Andrew, Abigail's father, perhaps hint at a number of underlying problems, maybe repressed urges or familial issues, as theorists and therapists may tell you. But mostly, how rude of me to, in my fantasy, insinuate myself between Abigail's parents to destroy her family, even in a setting as minute as my own mind. When tonight I returned home from scanning poems to send to my friend Sean, the front door was left wide open. I would be lying if I said I did not feel mad or betrayed in some very basic way. Inside my house, all of the people I live with slept soundly, except for Raph, who was fucking a girl in his bedroom, and is now talking loudly of the human condition, yelling to her about life, and all the while I have sat in my bedroom, rather morose, contemplating why lately I have no desire to fuck or to talk to anyone about life, or maybe only the desire to fuck Andrew, Abigail's unattractive and aging father. What's that about? So that was a poem. I don't know if you guys are familiar with poetry. It's a thing that happens sometimes. This next poem, I recorded a version of me reading it, and it was released on something called Lit Mixtapes. And the version I recorded of me reading it has a Pure Moods CD playing in the background. And I tried to download a Pure Moods CD on my computer last night, because I was like, I'm going to play that while I read it, and that did not go well, so I'm not going to be playing a Pure Moods CD while I read this. However, you can imagine the soothing sounds in the background. My first period. When I was 13 years old, blood poured from the sky, drenching my miserable body. I asked my mother, "What's wrong with me?" She laughed and said, "A lot is wrong with you. I drank constantly during my pregnancy." We laughed and looked toward the sky, where God's vagina was fleshy layers of cloud, its lips thwarting flight patterns of migratory birds, its clit blocking out the sun. Even in a drought, she told me, you can count on the 29-day cycle of God's vagina. It's a powerful poem, I know. I wrote it, I was like, shit, this is where it's at. This is poetry. This poem is a poem I wrote for my friend John Galvin, who is a beautiful person that I met in Chicago, and he moved to Texas, where he is from. He dropped out of the school that we were both going to. So I wrote him a poem because we were both being stupid and sad. The art. John Galvin and I are rock stars tonight. I'm sad and he's just a little bit horny. Someone in the audience knows it and yells, "How apropos!" Damn right, fucker. Our gigs are spiritual like Ann Waldman texts. John is from Texas, the very big Lone Star State, and I'm from the quaint Midwest. We are just two Catholic girls. We love George W. Bush. One of us is always drunk. I've never lived more than a mile from a river, and that's the way it should be. I woke up this morning and told John we are an art form. John nodded with guitar riffs so smooth, sexy. I opened the window a bit to let the smooth sounds fuck the street outside our cute loft. It was an air raid for the repressed and frigid business types below. Listen, sexy sounds. John went to take a shower. Why not, I said. When I made breakfast, the spirit of a dead man sang to me. John missed it. He was in the shower. I felt a little obvious. The dead are too soulful. John was a whirlwind when he found out. That's not where it ends, though. Next Saturday is an event, I said. John said, each Saturday is an event when you let it be one. I nodded for an eternity, and when I let up, there was still more to affirm. What's a girl to do? Who knew it? There was a little fit in my fire pit. I wanted nothing more. John has a dog that sheds all over the sofa. Stop it! I scream. John likes that too much. The thrill is gone. Lunch came next. What a meal. Oh, John, I said, bread is $9 today. It was so sad. All 9 of those dollars went to the bread man, but $1 extra, a tenth, floated up, away to the sky. We are lost, John said, and knowing me, I couldn't help but agree. John's a fag, and I'm pretty queer when you get down to it. People yell at us from below the stage, your band is something else. It's true. John never sings, and I never sing. Who is singing? The audience asks. I don't know. Ask our manager. John fucks a boy in Chicago. I do the same in Jersey. Then thunder, lightning, baby. We hit the road. This tour will be our last. We live for the art, but I'm fading, John. I'm fading, John, I say. He nods real quick. I can't even place it. Cruel summer, obviously. For dinner we ate rice and felt the poverty in our bowls. John says c'est la vie, but neither of us speak French. What a coincidence how it all worked out. Clap for me. Give me some applause. I'm great. This next poem is a poem I wrote for an anthology that's going to be released, I think, sometime in the summer, called Cityscapes, and it's poets writing about the cities they live in. And since I just moved in September, my poem is kind of about both me living in Chicago and me living in New Jersey, and it's a poem also that deals with the fact that I just turned 20 and I'm sad and feel old. Yeah, you guys are all a lot older than me, though, so you should feel worse. This poem is called At Night the States, which is something I stole from Alice and Ollie, so nobody tell her that I stole it. At Night the States, for Sean and Melinda. In Chicago, November, you wrote to say you had become heartbroken. I spend a lot of time loving people who won't love me back. It feels good to fail. I write you to say that I need art and less anxiety and have also fallen in love incorrectly. New Jersey, September, I am so curiously sick and miss the plate glass, the comfortable couch, self-loathing, self-consumptive. Your doorman is a clutch bastard, and we are fortunate to know held doors. Weeks later, I miss your first reading and cry alone in my bedroom because moments are fleeting, words do not carry well, and vegan ice cream costs $7. When I tell Laura I feel like a bad friend, she says I am a good friend. I am mad because Laura is smart and beautiful, but presently so wrong. I love the dirty water and buildings that point to a hell where the sun should be. I eat candy and look at the lake from your window while you lie like an exhausted child. Here the Rite Aid closes at 5, not 6, so I stand outside with my unfilled prescription and write in the cold and remember vividly throwing Cheetos into your mouth on the 75th floor of a skyscraper, looking down at people on the street and laughing, and looking at people in the room around us and laughing harder, our idols reduced to fallible regularities as they drink and smoke around us. To think there is such a definite imbalance between what I wanted out of life and what I am getting. Both are oddly satisfying, and the slush freezes to ice. While in the hospital, I thought of you perhaps coasting in some parallel twilight stranglehold. Distance frustrates my understanding of our disparate lives. At work, in the library, cloying struggles emerge tenfold, pleasant but ultimately forgettable, dwelling in the expanse of professional dress, the neckties, the nice shoes. Nothing loads fast enough, nothing less the puzzle, no problem is solvable, the water is too cold and the ice is too thin, fuck the police, fuck college, and me, 20, forever the skeptic, adamant that I cannot make anyone feel young again, even myself, even though the poems we are writing now will always be juvenilia. Noam and I climbed to the top of a hall on campus and watched a gold tree, and the hum of a radiator somewhere made me miserable. I just want to be quelled by pop music, watch basketball on my laptop, cry, sitting in the snow, pining for one thing, living in the failure of another. This next poem is called I'm 5. What is a poem? I can't read. I'm 5. Alright, this is it's gonna be my last poem for you guys tonight. I am currently in a workshop with the one, the only, Mark Doty, and I read this poem to my workshop class, and they did not like it. But Mark Doty told me that if I made a video of it and put it online, it would be the next Gangnam Style. So, if you want to get your phones out, guys, if you've been going for a big hit on the YouTube, now's your chance. This poem is called The National Poetry Basketball Association. It's the National Poetry Basketball Association, sponsored by Ford, sponsored by Miller Lite, sponsored by Keats, sponsored by Yates, sponsored by Dick's Sporting Goods, sponsored by Chevy, sponsored by NUI, sponsored by KFC, sponsored by the MLA, sponsored by Nike, sponsored literally by the Greek goddess Nike, sponsored by Coors Light, sponsored by a poor font choice, sponsored by Gatorade, the color of a dying fire, sponsored by self-loathing, sponsored by Pepsi, sponsored by the vacant feeling that swells within your desperate body when you look out toward the sea, sponsored by Geico, sponsored by Maternal Pangs, sponsored by Free Verse, sponsored by Free Throw, sponsored by this great pun I just made up, Poetry Slam Dunk, sponsored by Chili's, sponsored by Dactylic Meter, sponsored by A Beauty So Rare It Makes Me Want to Translate Virgil, sponsored by EA Sports, sponsored by a true account of talking to the sun at half court, sponsored by a shot clock made of diamonds, sponsored by Ruby Tuesday, sponsored by my festering internal sorrow, sponsored by a low residency MFA program, sponsored by a high residency MFA program, sponsored by a medium residency MFA program, sponsored by John Dunn talking about bone and chicks, sponsored by a company that makes mesh shorts, sponsored by my untitled second book, 2014, sponsored by Homeric Illusion, sponsored by White Castle, sponsored by April, the cruelest month, sponsored by my literary magazine, sponsored by my friend's literary magazine, sponsored by Ron Silliman's blog, sponsored by the attempted use of enjambment in a prose poem, sponsored by Applebee's, sponsored by that one poem about having sex with a swan, sponsored by Caps Lock, sponsored by Wanderlust, sponsored by agoraphobia, sponsored by Urban Decay, sponsored by Existential Angst, sponsored by McDonald's, sponsored by Lady Lazarus Footlocker, sponsored by the nervous tears that drape my face when I think about seeing you again, sponsored by Access, sponsored by the Sports Authority, sponsored by a sun setting near a bridge, sponsored by Dunkin' Donuts, sponsored by New Narrative, sponsored by Personism, sponsored by the Language Poets, sponsored by the Beat Poets, sponsored by the New York School, sponsored by me taking you to school, sponsored by a red wheelbarrow, sponsored by the road less traveled, sponsored by an impossibly large type of car, sponsored by the Poetic Process, sponsored by Phrases, sponsored by LOL, seriously call me when you find someone someone who isn't doing her MFA at UMass Amherst. Sponsored by Villanelle, sponsored by Sistina, sponsored by seasonal depression, sponsored by a sadness that cannot be articulated, sponsored by Sears Auto Center, sponsored by Heineken, sponsored by a 64% field goal percentage, sponsored by romanticism, sponsored by realism, sponsored by Buffalo Wild Wings, sponsored by my first marriage, sponsored by Billy Collins, sponsored by Billy Shakespeare, sponsored by 13 Personal Fouls, sponsored by Seriously, you guys, I need a head count before I book the hotel for AWP, sponsored by Adidas, sponsored by my small press, sponsored by Apprehension, sponsored by Leniency, sponsored by Tragedy, sponsored by Safe Auto, sponsored by Coke, sponsored by Despair, sponsored by the inconceivable color of your hair.
Yeah.
So, I'm glad that in that satirical poem you did not mention the New York State Council for the Arts, because without a grant from the New York State Council for the Arts, we would not be on this stage. I also want to thank the Zinc Bar very much for their continued generosity. It's really, really awesome to be at the Zinc Bar. This is such an incredible space. And finally, join us next week for To Be Announced, and join us the week after for Jack Tricarico and Rochelle. Thank you.